All right, this is part 2 of the Gretchen Whitmer Tudor Dixon debate. If you guys haven't checked out part 1, go check it out. If you liked it, make sure you go like it. This is part 2, and yeah, I don't really have anything to say, so let's just jump right into it.
Was silent. In fact, in the midst of the pandemic, when the legislature said they would give her money for reading scholarships, one of her people came out and said, smelled too much like vouchers because they don't want parents to have control. She doesn't want you to have an impact on your child's education.
Governor, 30 seconds.
Betsy DeVos's voucher plan might help Betsy DeVos, and it might help Tudor Dixon too, because her kids go to private schools. I don't have a problem with kids going to private schools. That's her choice.
Then why'd you attack it?
The fact of the matter is that most kids don't have those options. And that's why we've got to improve the education system across the state of Michigan so that every child has a great education. A governor's job isn't just to take care of our own kids, it's to take care of all of our kids.
Candidates, we're going to move on to another subject that was very high on the list, as you will understand. And people wanted to know 1,000 questions, that's an exaggeration, about the state's response to COVID-19. And
oh boy, here we go.
There's no way to go through all of the questions. So as we sat around trying to think of a way that we could get to that question and give it some depth, here's what we want to do. Instead of going one by one through every grievance or why did this happen or why didn't this happen, I want you to think back. Given the advantage of 2.5 years of knowledge that we didn't have in March of 2020, and given the advantage of hindsight, which is always particularly good, I want to first ask you, Governor, looking back, if there is anything that you would have done differently. And Ms. Dixon, when I get to you, I want to ask you, if you had been governor, what would you have done differently? Governor?
Well, let's start with this. COVID was incredibly hard on every single one of us. We know that this was a brand new virus that we didn't know a lot about. We knew that our hospitals were filling up and that people were dying. We were in desperate search of masks and ventilators. There were refrigerated trucks outside of some of our hospitals to store people's bodies who didn't survive COVID. It was a desperate time. So I talked to the experts, I listened, I asked questions of our national experts, of state experts. I talked to my fellow governors, Republicans and Democrats, and we helped one another as we made tough decisions because lives were on the line. Studies have shown that our actions saved thousands of lives. Now, 35,000 people in our state have died from COVID. They may not matter to some, but they matter to me, every single one of them. If I could go back in time with the knowledge we have now, sure.
I'm not even going to say it because I know Tudor's going to cover it. But I will say, about 3 to 4 weeks in, after the lockdowns happened, we knew who it killed. Mostly obese people, people with comorbidities, people with other things happening with them. We knew the age of the people, but yet we locked everybody down, which actually caused more deaths because everybody was locked in a house with each other, and it spread a lot easier that way. We knew that 4 weeks in, who it killed, why it killed them. That's all you really need to know. We knew. And it hasn't changed. But yeah, we were locked down the longest. We knew. She didn't listen.
I would have made some different decisions, but we were working in the middle of a crisis and lives were on the line.
Mrs. Dixon, given the information that we had 2.5 years ago, what do you think you would have done differently if you were governor?
Well, the governor wants you to believe that she did listen to the experts, but we have the letter from the Nursing Home Association that said, whatever you do, don't send COVID-positive patients into nursing homes. And yet the governor did. When Andrew Cuomo even backed off of this, Governor Whitmer doubled down. She even tried to hide the final report of the numbers of how many deaths we had. In fact, she's tried to hide a lot from this pandemic. She tried to hide, or she did hide, effectively, why her Department of Health and Human Services director left. In fact, she even paid him off with a secrecy agreement. The same with unemployment. What a debacle to have $8.5 billion fraudulently sent out. Now I've got people bringing bills from the state up to me.
Yes! Oh my gosh. I owned a business that got shut down. I was also working in a business that got shut down. So I started taking unemployment, and now I'm continuously getting letters from the state of Michigan telling me that I owe them that unemployment money back. Get the fuck out of here.
Begging me to forgive the unemployment that she's trying to get out back because she accidentally sent $8.5 billion out. And what about our students that she kept locked out of schools and wouldn't listen to parents when they begged her to let them play? Let them play. She wouldn't even listen.
Governor, you have 30 seconds.
None of what my opponent just said is true.
Get the
just
fuck
isn't.
out of here.
Here are the facts. While my life
Here are
is
the
being
facts.
threatened for making hard decisions to save lives across our state, Mrs. Dixon was spreading conspiracy theories. Mrs. Dixon was downplaying masks, saying that this would go away.
Those aren't conspiracy theories anymore. Those are not conspiracies. It's fact. The masks didn't stop the spread, like you said they would.
Without getting vaccinated. She said kids couldn't get COVID. Had she been governor during the pandemic, thousands more people would have died.
She said kids couldn't die from COVID, and very few did. Very few did, and the ones that did, probably on their way out anyways.
A lot of those deaths would have been in our nursing homes.
30 seconds.
Unfortunately for Gretchen Whitmer, everybody knows that I have been vaccinated and she's completely dishonest. But she can't be honest because she knows that her response was so completely horrendous. In fact, she closed restaurants down longer than any other state, and we lost 3,000 restaurants.
Yeah. Two of my favorite places are gone. I lost my job. I wasn't making really any money from the restaurant job that I had. She just shut it down. She was taking the liquor licenses away from restaurants that stayed open. She does not have the power to do that. I could drive down to the state of Indiana and go and sit down and have a meal, but I couldn't do that here in Michigan. There's literally nothing to say on this topic because Gretchen Whitmer's response was so bad, and she wants us to forget about it. I won't forget about how you handled it, and neither will a lot of Michiganders. We cannot let this woman make us try to forget her response to this and how bad it truly was. It was awful. It didn't save any more lives than the states that were opened up.
But we just got a report today. Just got the report today. Michigan is having a slower comeback than any of our surrounding states. So not only did she make bad choices when she closed us down and refused to open our schools, but she hasn't figured out how to recover.
Candidates, we move on, and this is one of the more unusual
She's got
questions
nothing
that
to
I've
say.
ever had because we've never been quite here since I've been covering politics in the state of Michigan. Michigan has rarely had more of a robust treasury. There has been more money that has come through. Some of it is federal, a lot of it is state money. There are billions of dollars that are still unallocated, even after the largest budget ever and the largest school aid fund ever. So my question is, and it goes first to you, Mrs. Dixon. What do you do with that money? Do you save it? Do you spend it? Give it back to taxpayers? None of the above? What do you do with maybe $6 or $7 billion?
Well, certainly, you know, I want some of it to go back into schools, to harden our schools, and to make sure that our kids are getting back up. As I stated earlier, Michigan is one of the only states that didn't implement a robust tutoring system after the pandemic to get our students back on track. And the test scores show. Right now, our third graders just failed their literacy exams nearly 60% across the state. And in
Jeez,
Detroit,
is that
90%.
true?
So when we talk about making sure there's no wrong path, that hasn't happened in the state of Michigan. We have the funding to make sure our public schools have the resources that they need. It's time for us to use them to make sure our kids get back on track and focus on the basics. Get back to reading, writing, and math. The governor still has not made a comment about the fact that parents are begging for our schools to go back to the basics and get our kids back on track.
Governor?
Let's talk about a few stats. Michigan's economic recovery is the fastest than any we've seen in our history. We have one of the strongest economic recoveries in the country. We know that we are seeing small business growth that's outpaced any year that we've seen in the last 23 years. We've made record investments when it comes to securing the future of the auto industry here. General Motors, $7 billion building batteries. Ford, Stellantis. It's not just about autos. It's about the future of manufacturing, future of life sciences. Perrigo moved their headquarters from Florida here to Grand Rapids. Pfizer expanded in Kalamazoo. We're also onshoring chip production to bring supply chains home from China to Michigan. KLA, SK Siltron, Calumet Electronics, Hemlock Semiconductor. We are building the future of the economy. And we're also training our workforce so that they can get into those good paying jobs you can raise a family on. 170,000 Michiganders are signed up for our opportunities tuition free to get educations and skills.
Mrs. Dixon, 30 seconds, please.
If the governor could just be honest, the report came out today showing that Michigan is in a terribly slow recovery. In fact, we've lost more small businesses than any other state except for New York. We're tied for losing the most small businesses. We've also lost 82,000 jobs while Gretchen Whitmer was in office, and she hasn't saved the automotive industry. She's only trying to save face now because she knows Ford left and went to Kentucky and Tennessee. And when she was asked, her response was, I think we didn't know.
Governor?
That's ridiculous. Listen, we are top 10 state for new business. We are the #1 state in the nation for clean energy job growth. We have put our fiscal house in order. My opponent is proposing a $12 billion cut to our budget. She likes to say she has business in the steel industry. But in a time when that industry had record profits, her company didn't pay the gas bill, didn't pay the trash bill, didn't pay their employees, and got sued dozens of times by other businesses they didn't pay either.
Let's stay with Michigan's budget to some degree, and it also talks on another topic that was discussed a lot in this studio 4 years ago. And we'll go to you, Governor, first with this. There has been more money put back into Michigan's budget for roads. Some of that came from bonding you did early on. Some of it's coming from the infrastructure package. But here's the problem. Michigan roads, all roads, but Michigan roads always need to be fixed. It's a perpetual type of thing.
Constantly.
And I thought John from Muskegon came up with a great question because he worries about this. He says, with the current push towards electric vehicles, are the gas taxes going to be raised even more to pay for road repairs since the EVs aren't paying for gas tax? My question is, are we going to need a new revenue stream and maybe even a new distribution formula for funding roads going forward?
John is brilliant. He's making an observation that is really smart, and I appreciate that. You know, we listened to people as I got all across the state of Michigan when I first ran for governor. And we know that when you've got to replace the rims on your car, it's money out of rent or childcare. This is a fundamental for Michigan families. And so we've already rebuilt 13,000 lane miles, 900 bridges. There are orange cones and barrels all over the state because we are fixing the dam roads and moving dirt. But you don't overcome
And they've been there all 4 years.
decades of disinvestment in 4 years. It is going to be an ongoing need. The $4.8 billion that I worked with in a bipartisan way with the legislature to get done will help us do more when it comes to fixing our roads, rebuilding our bridges, fixing water infrastructure that brings water into our homes. The Biden administration sent us billions with the Infrastructure and Jobs Act. I'm grateful for.
Does Flint have clean water? Does Benton Harbor, where I live, have clean water? I feel like that's a little more important than building a fucking bridge.
That will help. But as we think about the transition that's happening in our auto industry, our solution for roads is going to have to transition as well.
Mrs. Dixon, it's going to be a question the next governor is going to have to deal with.
Yeah, I'm sure this question was asked because 4 years ago on this stage, the governor was asked if she would raise taxes to pay for the roads that she said she was going to fix, which we now know her own roads commission says are in worse shape than when she took office.
Yeah, he
In
did
fact,
say that.
she said no, she wasn't going to raise the taxes. That was ridiculous. It was nonsense. You've heard those words come out of her mouth a few times tonight as well. Just remember that when she was saying those words 4 years ago, then one of her first acts when she got into office was to try to raise your gas taxes by 45 cents. In fact, when she says she's worked in a
It was
bipartisan
45
manner,
cents.
she's actually vetoed road funding in the past because she didn't get her way on 45-cent gas tax. You're right, we will have to figure out a way to fund the roads. It's going to take public-private partnership in the future, but it's going to be a ways out because the entire country is not going to go to EV vehicles overnight.
Governor, 30
Sure.
seconds to respond.
I think the evidence is all across the state, despite what Mrs. Dixon's commercials say. We are fixing.
The evidence is there. Right down the road, there's a pothole that's the size of a damn tire. The highways that I live next to have been under repair for years. Like, if you're going to get it done quicker, please.
Fixing the damn roads. We are moving dirt. We are using the right mix and materials.
You're
And
hiring the
built
wrong
to
people.
last. But you don't overcome decades of disinvestment overnight.
That's not
We
her.
recognize
that's a
that
local
there is a
issue.
lot
That's
of
not
good
that's
work
not
to
on
do.
her.
When you see those orange barrels, see that as a sign of progress and remember to please slow down. There are hardworking men and women on the side of the road
Thank
risking
you.
their lives to rebuild infrastructure to power our economy and
Thank you. Actually, I'm glad she said that because when I was working utility down in West Virginia, people did not slow down. So slow down, please. I don't want to die.
keep our families safe.
30 seconds.
You'll notice that as soon as another election was coming up, she started to put people out on the roads. The governor didn't fulfill her promise. In fact, when she asked just a few months ago, didn't you promise to fix the roads? She said, no, I didn't promise, at least not in the first term. Now she's saying it'll take a second term and maybe even several more terms just to do what she promised in the first place, which she knew she couldn't do. But she wanted to earn your vote then, and now she's trying to get your vote again.
Mrs. Dixon, I'm going to turn to crime and policing. I, again, was surprised by the number of
boy.
questions that we got about this. And I looked up a few statistics, and there are some that support the idea. This is from 2019 to 2021.
I already know what I'm going to look up.
Last year, the numbers are available, and it comes from the incident crime reporting from the Michigan State Police. And they show that there are some violent crimes that are on the rise, but in fairness, robbery, rape, and most property crimes, other than auto theft, are on decline. However, as governor, how can you promote
I already know what to look
a
up. and we'll
reduction
get there.
in crime? And what is your view on the question from a viewer in Grand Rapids who says, and by the way, this has been thrown around in this campaign, so I thought it was appropriate. Knowing that there still continues to be a defund the police movement out there, then what is your plan to rid our state of such violence so that taxpayers who fund government and the police agencies can feel safe again in their own homes?
Yeah, this is such an important question because we know the governor came out and said that she supports the spirit of defund the police. In fact, we know that when we were all locked down, she went out and marched with folks who held up signs that said defund the police.
Whitmer's going to deny
I'm
it.
actually
Watch
endorsed
this.
by the largest police union in the state, the Police Officers Association of Michigan, and more than 24 sheriffs, including Democrats, because they are so upset about the fact that the governor doesn't support them. My plan will put $1 billion new into policing to make sure they know they're supported, but also to recruit and retain new police officers. It's so challenging to bring police officers to a state where the chief executive officer has supported defund the police. We're going to make sure that not only are they supported, but they have the tools they need, they have the technology they need, and they have the mental health help they need. And they will always know that a Dixon administration has their back. We will never defund the police.
Governor, 60 seconds.
My opponent is long on rhetoric and short on facts, and that's okay. I got to tell you, as a former prosecutor, I have sat with our law enforcement. I have worked arm in arm with them, and that's why the budgets that I have written have been focused on supporting. I can tell you as governor, I've made too many phone calls.
Just because I knew she would say that her facts were wrong. Published 9:25 a.m. June 10th, 2020. We all know what was happening around that time. Governor Gretchen Whitmer said Tuesday she supported the spirit of efforts to defund the police in the wake of George Floyd's death last month at the hands of a Minneapolis police. A statement that her officer later clarified did not indicate support for eliminating funding. So yes, it wasn't exactly clear if she was going to defund the police, but she supported the spirits of it.
To grieving families who've lost their loved ones on the front line. I've attended too many funerals and visitations. And that's why we've got to talk about gun violence. My opponent's proposing policies that increase guns, decrease oversight, and eliminate gun-free zones. That's not going to make us any safer. Here's what will.
What do the mass shooters attack? They attack the gun-free zones.
I delivered a bipartisan investment in our law enforcement, $1 billion for training, for recruiting, for making sure that we're shoring up pensions for those who risk their lives for all of us every day. Every one of us deserves to feel safe in our home and in our communities. Investing in law enforcement is what we have done and what we need to continue to do to keep people safe.
Mrs. Dixon, 30 seconds.
It must be so embarrassing for the governor that it's actually on tape that she said she supports the spirit of defund the police. That's the truth. I'm not short on facts. In fact, when she didn't get her gas tax increase...
To be fair, Tudor, she may have said she likes the spirits of it, but she didn't actually do it. Which, I mean, let's be honest, that's what Gretchen likes to do. She'll say something and not do it. But she didn't actually do it. She just supported the spirits of it.
She decided to then veto funding for our road patrols. Now she's coming out and saying she's bipartisan and she's supporting the police, but her record shows something terribly different. In fact, that's why we've lost a cop a day in Detroit this year. It's devastating to see the chief executive officer treat our police officers this way.
Governor?
I know Mrs. Dixon is committed to her talking points, but the fact of the matter is just this week, with a group of Republican and Democratic legislators, I signed a bill to support our secondary road patrol. Just this week, I was endorsed by a different police organization and a number of prosecutors and sheriffs.
Which one?
They're split. You know why? They usually go to the Republican side, but they've seen me in action. They know we have made the biggest investment supporting them, and we will continue to do so long as I'm governor.